Welcome to episode 33 of Rubbish Talk with myself, Alistair Meldrum.
And myself, Jane Bond.
You're back from skiving then, Jane?
Yeah, I'm back from my holidays. Yeah, it was a bit of a shock to come down 20 degrees from Dubai to Edinburgh Airport, but hey, I'm getting back to it.
It was raining when you arrived back.
It wasn't actually, surprisingly. It did rain in Dubai though.
I saw that. I watched an international weather forecast the other day, and there's lots of rain and bad weather in that part of the world at the moment.
And the thing was, it rained for the day, but they don't have any drainage. So there's just like massive puddles everywhere. So, and there's like I got a warning thing on my phone, don't go out because there's going to be extreme weather conditions. I was like, crikey, they've not been to Scotland.
Brilliant. Anyway, so our guest today is a very, 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 very long-serving gentleman of the waste industry, a gentleman by the name of Terry Marsh. And we have a really interesting chat with Terry later on. But before we get into that, a few news items from Jane and myself. And Jane, you've picked up one that was a bit off the wall. I wasn't quite sure was correct or not, or a joke, but I think it's real.
Well, I think so. It's not April 1st just yet, but it's human hair and making that into something useful. I kind of find this is quite interesting because there's two things, like human hair. I remember when my daughter had her hair cut and she donated it to the Princess Trust so that they could make wigs.
Oh, you can get wigs made, can't you?
Yeah, for the children's and things like that. But this is another thing that you can do with it, is to save the environment from oil spills, which is quite cool. So because hair actually absorbs quite a lot more oil and petroleum than other things, eco-friendly alternative, we can make mats of hair. I mean, it does look a bit disgusting, to be honest. I'm hoping the hair is actually cleaned and washed before it's made into a mat. But if you have a look at it on the I think it's Matter of Trust website, it's a sort of not-for-profit, and they're using them as mats for oil spills, which is quite impressive, actually.
There we go. I'm sure we could put the wee link to that video. It was quite an interesting little video.
It was, but I think also the hair can be composted as well. I'm sure we did some hairdressing, looked at a number of hairdressers once, and some of them, because they all have loads of hair, and some of the hair was obviously taken to wigs, some of them was used in composting, but perhaps this is another use of them.
There we go. And the next one I've got is we're back to our favourite, or maybe our least favourite subject of POPs and WUDs. And for the people that can't remember what that is, so persistent organic pollutants in waste upholstered domestic seating. So this is where that material needs to be shredded and incinerated, and it can no longer go to landfill. But the interesting one here is the Environment Agency have come out with a position paper, and this is all to do with the emissions from shredding of this waste, and what abatement they need to put in place to prevent that getting into the atmosphere. And there's quite a detailed position statement that the Environment Agency put out that says you don't need abatement if you comply with certain conditions, but that obviously only applies south of the border. But interestingly, in Scotland at the moment, lots of councils try to grapple with how do they manage their collection services, their bulky uplift collections, their fly tipping, their household waste recycling centre sites. How do they bring that material in? How do they secure a disposal route, an incineration route for that material? So lots of work going on across Scotland, and we've been involved in as Albion in quite a few of these jobs, try to help councils work out what they need to do. And it always looks fairly simple on paper, and then when you start delving in a bit deeper, it becomes more and more complex in terms of how we get the message across the public. But basically what we're saying is that sofa you've sat on for the last 20 years, we've got to deal with that slightly differently from the way we've done it in the past. So watch this space, I think, in terms of POPs and WUDs.
Yeah, I suppose I've got something different here. I've been looking at the CIWM, Chartered Institute of Waste Management, and we always like it when people start giving grants and money away. So the CIWM have launched a fund to make grants of up to £10,000 to support the marketing of circular economy products, which is great because one of the things we get, there's lots of small and micro, SMEs and really small companies that have really got amazing products and services, but they don't have the expertise, or they don't have the resources or whatever to market these products. So that's what CIWM are providing, which looks absolutely brilliant. There is applications are open until the 22nd of April, and it says eligible businesses might include those promoting initiatives that involve sharing, leasing, reuse, repair, refurbishment, or recycling. So, partnering with the communications agency, there's a Survey Monkey survey thing to fill in, and we'll put all that information on the show notes. But if you're a small company that has got an innovative product and you need to get that to market, then that's free money.
There you go. We could have a collection service for all the hairdressers and turn it into oil maps, and there's a little business going there, Jane. We're sorted.
Absolutely, blimey.
Sorted.
I just thought of that beforehand.
Before we announced it to the world, eh?
Yeah, that's right. Somebody's going to take that idea now, Alistair.
I know. The other one I picked up, and I think we've maybe mentioned this before, is the MRF code of practice. So this is material recycling facilities. So this is where your commingle material will go to. So your paper collection or your cans, metals, plastics bin. And a long time ago, probably at least 10 years ago, there was a code of practice put in place where these organisations had to sample the incoming waste and sample the outgoing waste for levels of contamination and so on. And that gets reported to a public website. So SEPA's got that on their recycled quality website. And because that tender came out, I was thinking, I wonder what's happened to the data. How's the data looking? So I thought I'd have a little look. And we've actually gone a little bit backwards. So the code of practice, so the data currently on the website goes back to 2015, so 8 years. And initially the contamination rate sat about 10%. We're now at the last quarter or the third quarter of 2023, our contamination level is 18%. So using the figures they've got on the site, the estimate is almost 3 million tonnes of DMR treated every year. So if you actually think about that, that's almost 500,000 tonnes of non-recyclate in that waste stream, which is quite horrendous figures. And from the poor operator's point of view, they're having to do all this extra testing, but we don't seem to put any strategies in place to actually do anything about this. We've just let it get worse and worse.
Do you think that's just because everybody's got a bit complacent about what they put in their bins, and they've forgotten what's supposed to be in there, and they're not actually? We need more communication campaigns. I don't know. It just seems like how do we improve that?
There's a perfectly good bin app out there, Jane, that does that for Dundee residents and South Ayrshire Council residents, where they can type in the item and it will tell them which bin it needs to put in. And that could be done easily across Scotland. But I think there's obviously look at non-target material, as in the type of material, so it can still be recycled, but it's not what the operator's looking for. And then you've got the actual pure non-recyclable waste. And I think the challenge is there are some of the waste streams that are that badly contaminated, bringing the levels down. I know, certainly talked about this before, in South Ayrshire we've got a paper and card bin, for example, and that when you go down the back lane, it is pretty much paper and card, so the level of contamination's certainly dropped quite considerably. But I know from talking to some operators where they've got maybe a metals, plastic cans, that type of thing as a collection, and then councils are under a bit of pressure, or Scottish Government's under pressure to get soft plastic out, and they're adding that to it, and it's actually making the stuff really hard for the processors to recycle.
I suppose that's the thing, what is it contaminated with? Is it contaminated with plastics they can't treat, or is it contaminated with just a load of rubbish, but like black bag stuff and food waste, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, it's this, there's always been this disconnect between what the councils tell the public they can do, what the recycling company can actually physically achieve, and how quickly they can probably recycle anything, but in terms of speed of process, the more complex you can make it for the machinery, the longer it takes and the less the process. It's there's a real disconnect with it, but until we start having a proper contamination policy in place with councils, it's never going to get any better. So we've got to start genuinely leaving the bins and not picking up the bins, and ultimately we should be charging people.
You got to think though, you've got a lot of people out there who again don't have our bin app, which local councils, East Renfrewshire particularly, they don't have these bin apps, and people are just thinking, oh well, it's plastic. If I put it in the plastic, somebody will recycle it, it'll be fine. And they're thinking they're trying to do the right thing, but actually it's not, it's making it worse. Yeah.
But there's a huge, almost 500,000 tons of waste going to landfill and incineration. There's a huge cost saving here, potentially.
Yeah, that is a lot.
If we get the right stuff in the right bin, the savings are massive. But it's interesting. We'll put the link to the CIPA website. You can search the data and you get to play about with the data in terms of, I think you can actually search by your council area on the site.
Cool.
I think you can anyway. No, you can. Okay, sorry. No, I'm hesitating here. I'm just looking at the website. You can search by the company that's doing the work. So if you know which company actually takes your waste, which I suppose the public wouldn't know that actually. So that's maybe something for CIPA to take on board. That we can search by company, but not necessarily by local authority area.
Local authority area, yeah.
So unless it's hidden, it might be hidden away in the website someplace. But there you go.
I've got something here that we found quickly, and this is something that relates back to. It doesn't relate back to, but we do a lot of training. One of the things we talk about is duty of care, and one of the programs I bring up quite a bit is there was a program that CIPA were involved in a while back, a couple of years ago, and it was really, really interesting. It was on the BBC, and it was Disclosure, and it was all about dumping waste and how the trailer found abandoned at the side of A73 in Lanarkshire filled with domestic household waste, and how criminal gangs were looking at waste and just, people were paying for getting their rubbish taken away but not checking where it was going, and it was being abandoned in a trailer in North Lanarkshire somewhere. But one of the most recent things, which was good as well, what we just looked at, was that over the last 3 days they've been doing a removing fly tipping in Perth and Kinross. So rubbish on land at Lower Friarton on the banks of the River Tay in Perth, 232 tonnes were cleared. The joint clean-up with Perth and Kinross, Scottish Water, CIPA and the Tay salmon fisheries. I mean, some of that waste said has been around for about 15 years. I mean, it's shocking that once somebody starts dumping rubbish somewhere, people just keep going, isn't it? And 230 tonnes of that, I mean, apparently they've installed some mobile cameras, whatever, to try and catch the fly tippers in the act. But you increase we're increasing the landfill tax. Does that increase fly tipping? Is it just criminal gangs would do it anyway? It's such a shame in our society.
The old cynic in my Jane says, "Why on earth have we waited 15 years to address this?" It's great that it's been sorted now, but come on, surely we can do a bit better than that. And as you say, landfill tax going up to over 120. Well, We don't know yet if it's going up in Scotland, but we assume it'll go up in Scotland. But it'll be over 100. Was it 120? It's even higher than that. Isn't it? £130 a ton. The opportunities for criminal gangs is even higher. But interesting you mentioned about the SEPA's been doing a big campaign, a big social media campaign about, the man with a van, trying to make sure householders don't just hire a man with a van that's not a legal carrier, is fly tipping your waist type thing. There was some press about that recently, actually.
Yeah. It says here, don't entrust your waste to somebody if they are unable to tell you basic information like their SEPA waste carrier registration number and where they're taking it to. When you look at that 230 tonnes, right? I mean, I bet that cost a fortune for Perth and Kinross and Scottish Water, SEPA and the salmon fisheries to get rid of as well. If you're talking about sending it to landfill, £100 a tonne, that's 230 times £100 a tonne before you've even started.
You're 30 grand in landfill tax before you even start.
Yeah, I'm glad you can do that. I'm glad you can do the sums.
I've got a calculator on my desk here, June.
And then it says, the fines are £500. £500 a fine, and you think, well, okay, is that really worth it?
Yeah, maybe we need to join up the cost of these things with. I know. I think I've talked on this before. I know South Ayrshire had a case where they identified the fly tipper, they prosecuted the fly tipper, and the fly tipper got a couple of £100 fine, but it cost the council 15 grand to remove the waste.
Yeah, it's shocking,
and
isn't it?
that needs to be addressed. They need to be charged for the clean up properly. But we'll get there. Anyway, I think that was all the news items was spotted. Just some Albion news, and we've not done this for a while actually. And we're conscious when we look at the stats. We do get some stats from the website or the system we put the podcast out. And what's interesting is we've got lots of new listeners. So we're conscious that some listeners may not have listened to the earlier episodes, but we've tried to highlight why we're doing the podcast and what we're trying to do. So really just a reminder, what we're trying to do is sort of highlight and explain some of the complexity of the waste sector. And we've been trying to do that via, if you like, people's career journeys. So we've been trying to pick people from different parts of the sector and interview them and explain and chat through things as we go. So that's just a little reminder for people.
I think it's good because, it's a good excuse for us to chat and learn things off people, and we're learning. The listeners, and if anybody's listening to it, are learning as well. And again, we've what have we had? 30. This is our 33rd, isn't it?
33rd episode.
33 people on, and obviously episode 12, including myself. But we do need new guests. So if anybody's got any thoughts about guests, or if they think, oh, do you know what, I'll be an absolutely fantastic guest and I've got so much to say, then get in touch. We're always open to chatting with anybody, really, aren't we, Alistair? We'll talk to anybody.
Absolutely. And anybody, as long as you've got a link to the waste industry, we will happily chat. We have had a bit of a dearth of female candidates. We were trying to do a 50% split. For various reasons, we've had a bit of a run of male guests recently. So, particularly any good female guests out there, quite happy to sort of hear from you. And interesting enough, I just did a little check. I've not looked at this one for a while, but we've now got listeners from 44 countries around the world. So there you go. So we've got a mix of who we've got. We've got Europe, we've got some of Europe, we've got Netherlands, we've got Italy, we've got Romania, all sorts. What was South Korea, Saudi Arabia, Estonia, Lithuania, Nigeria, Czech Republic.
Got any from Dubai?
Did you not listen from Dubai there?
Yeah, I did.
What's that? United Arab Emirates. Yeah,
UAE.
United Arab Emirates. Yeah. We've got a listener there. So our top these days in the European ones are actually the United States. For some reason. So if you are one of our listeners on the far off shores, please get in touch.
And do you know what? If you're a female listener, far
Absolutely working
offshore
away.
with a relation to waste, give us a shout. Even better.
Absolutely. But on our age demographic, we're not doing so well. So we're back up to male listeners are almost 60%, female are down at 40.
Oh, come on, girls.
And then with our age demographic, it's even worse. The big peak of 55% listeners are over 45 to 59. The younger generation are fairly poorly represented at the moment. So
we
we
want
did have
a young female from abroad.
Maybe it's the age demographics of our guests, and this week's age demographic probably doesn't help that profile because Terry Marsh just celebrated his 80th birthday, so he's certainly one in the older generation, but loads of good knowledge, loads of good stories, and somebody that's made it his passion to encourage other people into the sector, I would suggest. So over to Terry and myself and Jane.
Hi Terry, nice to meet you. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, in spite of the weather, but I got web feet, but there you are. That's a sign of the times, isn't it? That's global warming, you see, global warming, web feet.
Well, absolutely.
Don't talk to me about wet feet. I just spent the weekend down in the Galloway Hills and it never stopped peeing it down with rain. So between the wet ground and the thing, I've never been as wet in my life. I didn't even need a shower when I got home because I'd been soaked all weekend.
Well, I've just spent 10 days on holiday in Dubai where the sun was out and the sun was shining and sitting by the beach sipping cocktails. But anyway, sorry about that, Terry. Moving on from web feet. You've been in this industry a long time, haven't you? I suppose I've known you or known of you from CIWM and all that sort of stuff, but what are you doing now? What's your sort of what keeps you going?
What keeps me going? Well, I say, having reached 80, 56 years in the industry, I thought I'd gracefully retire from paid employment. Most recently, I've been an external quality assurer for WAMITAB, CIWM WAMITAB, which has been great for the last few years doing that. What keeps me going now is basically with CIWM chartered upgrading is mentoring people. So I've got next week we're doing interviews and I've got 4 mentees for that. I've already got some mentees for the next tranche of interviews in June. So that really is keeping the ball, and you can do it anywhere. I mean, I've got a mentee from Saudi Arabia. I've had mentee. Oh yeah, I've got mentee. You can do it all across the world. Last interviews we interviewed a guy from New Zealand, which was interesting. 9:30 in the morning our end and 10:30 at night at his end. So it was. But yes, you can do it, and there's more international involvement and more international interest, and it's fascinating. You learn so much. But you've got to be up to date. You've got to be on the ball. You've got to be up to date. You've got to know what it's all about. You've got to know more than them. Try to. In the general, you do, and that really means I'd work hard at it. But spending an hour chatting to somebody and sharing knowledge and learning from it and demystifying the process is really a great feeling, and it gives me great satisfaction.
Yeah, I used to do some of the CIWM interviews. I've not done any for a while, but I find them so fascinating, because you're talking to people and they're giving you presentations or whatever on things that you've got some knowledge of, but obviously their expertise in it. And you learn so much from other people as well as, being able to mentor them through the process. But yeah, no, I can see where you're coming from in that one.
So 56 years, did you say, Terry?
Yeah.
56. That's an impressive record in waste management. How did you end up in the waste industry in the first place?
Well, that's the usual thing. I started out as an apprentice metallurgist, so I qualified as metallurgist in the steel industry, and then within that, once I'd qualified on that, I went into management services work study, the technical side on that, and once you go into that, of course, you can then go into any industry and any job. And having spent some time doing that, I thought looking for pastures new, where can I go? And just recently got married and going to move somewhere else, so we decided we'd move. So I looked for a job and found a job with a local authority, Bristol City Council. The job was a combination of my professional side and my hobby, which was vehicle maintenance. I mean, I was the guy who took a car, did a complete stripped on an engine in a street corner. You know, we didn't have a garage, and so I was quite happy stripping cars down. So that was my real fascination with. And when I joined this job, I hadn't looked at it particularly. They happened to be refuse vehicles, and that was it. And that was it. I was hooked, and I joined the wonderful world of waste.
Wow, that's
Well,
quite impressive, actually.
That's
I can,
good.
yeah, I bet the vehicles are a bit different now than they were then, though.
Well, I was going to ask that. What was the first car? We're going off a sidetrack already here, Terry. What was the first car you stripped down and fixed?
First car was the Ford Anglia. That was my first cars, and the old Morris thousands, obviously. Those were the first ones. Yeah, fascinating job, and yeah, as I say, you do need, if you're going to be studying somebody maintaining a vehicle, you need to know a bit about it, because you need to know what he's doing, and when he takes this bit off, when he takes that bit off, what that bit is. It's no saying when he took something off the machine, off the vehicle. You need to know that that's the distributor, that is, and etc. etc. So yeah, it was the only thing about it. Of course, it was very smelly, but there we are. That's goes with the territory.
So how long were you at Bristol for, Terry?
Most of my working life, I changed
right.
various jobs. Well, the whole situation changed because I started off. I joined them as in transport and cleansing department. That's what it was called then. So and then
and was that in was that in the days where it was metal bins, or were there black plastic collections, or how was the collection back in that day?
We had the dustless bins. Remember those? Those were a forerunner of the wheel bin, the plastic bin, but they were metal. Lift the same on idea, but you couldn't lift it. It was so heavy, so solid. You had to have a trolley to wheel it to the vehicle, hook it on the vehicle, and then you had two lifts, and they'd emptied in the vehicle, plus plastic bags as well. But yeah, that was the old days. So it wasn't horse and cart. I would say that. Get that clear.
It was a wee bit after horse and cart. It was a wee bit after.
It was a bit after horse and cart, although it seemed like it. But yeah.
Not much recycling going on then, Terry.
Very little recycling. I'm ashamed to say that eventually they had a recycling service in Bristol, and I shut it down because it was paper they were doing. All they were doing is paper, and the paper market just collapsed. There was three board mills in Bristol taking it, and then it came down to one board mill, and then we got the situation where they found any reason not to take it off me, and I had 1,000 tons of paper in an old aircraft hangar, just sat there until it burnt down. Everybody thought I'd done it, but I hadn't. Obviously, I didn't do it. But
so waste fires was an issue then as well. Eh?
It was an issue, but yes, the market completely collapsed. And if you can't get rid of it, you can't get rid of it. There's no it's been the same ever since. But I did then, just to rectify it later on. Then I did work closely with the voluntary sector to start services again and collections again. So and give them a lot of support with it in terms of physical support and in financial support and practical support. So that brought it round, and now, of course, today Bristol is, you can recycle anything you think of virtually. I can't get anything that they don't recycle. Brilliant service, weekly service, everything you can have, even down to things like small wee and batteries and all sorts of things. So you name it, they recycle it.
Everything's changed so much, hasn't it? What got you into CIWM then? Because I know you're a big CIWM person, and your past, you can discuss that.
Yeah, well, that was probably John Lever, another past president, who took over the part of Bristol, and he was obviously very keen on it, and he dragged me into it, and I ended up doing it. I became then, as ever, you'll know that they needed a centre secretary, and you're either a volunteer who does that thing or you aren't. and I was one, and I was roped into it, and I did it for 30-odd years because nobody else wanted to touch it. I can assure you, and that was it. So that what brought me into it, and I've obviously been clearly involved, and it's the education and training is my passion. So I was on the committee and all that sort of thing, and the general councillor, etc., etc., etc. I'm still part of the centre council now. I'm the centre treasurer and part of the centre council, so I'm still there doing that. And as I say, it's you either volunteer, that's your nature, or isn't. I think people got to realise that some are and some aren't. I joined 30 odd years ago a motor club with my best mate, and within 6 weeks I was secretary of the motor club. Because nobody would do it. It's a job nobody would do. It's a thankless job, as you know, organising things and cajoling people and getting meetings to happen and all that sort of thing. And it really is a thankless job. But I suppose my work study background, organisational skills, that's what made it happen.
Yeah, I think the CIWM is really important in the industry, isn't it, to be able to provide that training and focus on what's happening, and a one-stop shop to go for what's happening in the waste industry.
I mean, it is. I mean, I then did, obviously, as part of it all, I did a huge amount of training with CIWM, literally around the world, and worked with other groups, because we did some work with Shell Oils, and did some work with World Bank recently as well. And that has taken me around the world, and which has always been fascinating. Unfortunately, you never spent long. You were there so busy doing the training, you didn't spend much time looking around. We did insist on an extra day at Singapore to give us a chance to look around Singapore, which was fascinating. That was, even if there's only to go to Raffles Bar and have a Singapore sling, which we were doing.
As you've got to.
Well, that was 10 o'clock in the morning. That was. We said, "Oh, we're going to have a cup of tea," and you can't have a cup of tea in Raffles Bar in Singapore, can you? So we had a
cocktail.
Cocktail 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it'd be cocktail time someplace in the world, Terry.
Always is, yeah.
Yeah. What any sort of favourite roles, projects you've done? Any that's really stick in your memory, as or any that have been really sort of challenging that have tested you?
Well, plenty of challenging ones. In some ways, the most challenging one is not really recognised with waste management. Was, as in Bristol, one of my roles with my colleagues was running the winter gritting services, winter maintenance. And that is obviously the most thankless job you can get, because you can't win. You can't get it right. You'll get a forecast, and you'll either say, right, we're going to grit and salt these roads in advance because of the forecast, and it turns out to be pouring them with rain and plus 10 degrees. Or you don't go out because it's not going to be that bad, and the city comes to a skidding halt. So really, we had this competition. Whoever got the thing worst, made the worst decision, won a golden snowplow as an award. But was a theoretical one. But
was that an annual award? An
annual award for who could get it wrong. But it was a challenge. It's a different challenge altogether.
Yeah.
It's a bit changed days now, isn't it? Because you obviously had that joint waste management street, the snow clearance and stuff. Whereas a lot of the time it's quite separate now, isn't it? There's the sort of waste management and there's roads department, because I know there's some councils in Scotland, for example, where the refuse collection staff would get put on to clearing the snow off the streets or gritting the streets, on the basis they can't get to the bins anyway, so they're as well cleaning the streets, that thing. But it's not as common as it used to be, is it?
Oh no, but it was a good system, because you had this resource, and you obviously, and this was the big balance, because if you could call a guy in at 4 o'clock in the morning to do a pre-grit, that would be fine. He could then finish the gritting, and then he could go on and do his refuse collection. If you brought something overnight, then you lost them the next day. So it was always a balance. But we had that resource. We had the people there to do it. So it was a good resource. And and we worked it. But as you say, if it got too bad, they couldn't do the collection anyway. It certainly was a good study in human nature. I mean, the workers can be difficult, but winter gritting was a leveler, brought the best out in them. I can remember hauling guys off a vehicle for grit at 2 o'clock in the morning and said, "For God's sake, come and have a dish of soup. You've done enough." "No, no, I've got to finish this." "No, no, come on." And these are the same blokes who next day would be, in normal circumstances, would be really difficult. So it's manliest nature, I think. That's the challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine. Do you know, I was actually quite fascinated by these, you know, the buildings that they put the grit into, the way they're shaped like that.
Yeah.
Can you tell me why they're shaped like that?
It's just for rain and snow to go off, because if you have you don't want that collapsing under snow, which you've got grits under it, and you can't use it. You can't get in there because of the roof's caved in. So it's a natural shape to keep the snow off.
Yeah, I've always kind of wondered, because you always see it in that specific shape. There's nothing else that shape except the bit where you put the salt and the grit in it. Anyway, never mind.
I think somebody's obviously done a design someplace, Jane, and it's been shared around every council. And I think it's for the tipping the loads, isn't it? It's for tipping the salt as well with the height of the building, and then for loading the salt in the building, they'll need the clearance height as well.
Yeah, somebody was saying it's about condensation as well, and that it drips off down the sides of the building rather than dripping off the top and into the salt. But I don't know. There's all these theories. Anyway, that was just an aside, Terry. These are the things that we kind of go off on a tangent. You've kind of what about the worst thing that you've had in the waste industry? Is there any disasters? A lot of these times, these disasters, you look back at them and they're actually really quite funny. Have you got anything to share in that way?
The funny ones, yes, if you can do that. But unfortunately, it is obviously a very dangerous and a very serious business. And I know somebody recently where they had a near fatality, but they didn't. He was lucky, whereas one of my high national certificate students, he unfortunately had the experience of one of his people being killed on a refuse vehicle. He, when he was sufficiently in the right mind, he shared that with the class, and we learned so much from it. I mean, things you don't think of. There's not just the actual incident itself and all the shock of that, but the practical terms of what it does. So, but yeah, it's a fun. I always say when you get a group of people together in the waste industry, you'll end up with a laugh. It's I think it's a laugh or cry, I suppose, but we do tend to be a very highly amusing industry, because there will be the funny thing happening on the way to and those sort of things. So you'll get all that that happens, and that's why I say I think it's good bringing people into the industry and encouraging them. And I go back to what we call hump it and dump it days. That's what we did. You picked it up and dumped it. With plenty of large landfill sites, large quarries, holes in the landscape, and that was it. And then we saw obviously the change gradually, more and more, getting into more and more things, and obviously then getting into more practical things of prevention and things like that, and trying to educate the public, and try to appeal to their better nature. I'm not sure they got one as far as waste is concerned, because as that thing the other recently with keep it tidy, people think as far as recycling, and that's it. They think doing recycling, I'm doing my bit. They're not recycling very well either. They only half recycle. They don't. You look typical analysis of waste. I mean, once I saw in Scotland recently where they did, 50% of what's in the black bin is recyclable.
So we're not at least, Terry, at least.
Yeah, well, yes, that's what's left in there. They've taken a bit out. So it's a real challenge that the public, it salves the conscience by recycling. You then got the challenge, of course, that people lie about recycling as well. Oh yes, I do this, I do that, I recycle everything. And I've seen that in practice. You go along, somebody, I can't manage, I can't cope with the service. Okay, madam, we'll take you, and we go out there and we put a tarpaulin out I empty their wheel bin onto the tarpaulin and go through it, and there's glasses and cans and you name it, all sorts of things. And she's recycled everything she can, she says. So so when they go around and do a survey and say, do you recycle? Oh, yes, I do this, 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 and this. Well, take off 25%.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's quite good, actually. That's quite a good eye opener, wouldn't it be, if you went round to people and they say, yeah, recycle, and then you undid their bin and went, well, actually, can you imagine?
We saw as well, as you might have seen recently with it happening, where another one we did. And the lady was a difficult situation. She had twin babies in nappies. So, a real difficult situation. She couldn't cope. We went and did it. And we agreed then we'd provide her with a small bin for the nappies, and while the children were in nappies. But when we went into it and looked what was in there, the amount of food waste, unpacked and open food waste, loaves of bread, sliced bread unopened, cheese unopened, things like that. And that is surprising when you see the surveys of how much food waste there is, which is not even attempted to eat it. So, but it went, and that one she did. When we then were kept in contact with her, and she said, in the end, she said, "You were right." She said, I've done this. Now that I've got the babies out of nappies, and I can now cope." So you can see that, but you will get some people who will struggle with it, and there is this demand of I pay for my refuse collection and I want it weekly and that sort of thing, and
I pay my council tax, and you must do this.
When you point out to them how much they pay for those services, and it's probably £150, if that, out of £2,000, £2,000 or £3,000, it's peanuts, and they get a damn good service for that small amount they pay. That's the problem.
Yeah. You probably almost answered the next question, Terry. How do we get the public to engage with this more? How do we, to a certain extent, we've been banging our head against a brick wall with this for at least 20 years probably, since we started properly looking at recycling. How do we engage properly? How do we move it on a little bit?
I think it's the big club behind your back, pay as you throw. If you introduce pay as you throw, you'd see a hell of a difference. It's unfortunate. It could be done. I mean, okay, there's my wife and I, mature people, so we don't. Hopefully, we don't. But we've got our service, which is a weekly recycling and food waste as well. Most important, we get that done. We do it every week, and our wheel bin, 240-litre bin, we put out probably. It's collected every other week. We put it probably every 6 to 8 weeks. Eventually, it's in there. I think, well, there might be a bit of stuff smelling in there. We better put it out, and that's it. So we can do that, and I'm sure even families could do that if they're serious about cycling.
Yeah.
And I suppose when you're in the business, you daren't do that. You daren't not have it. You daren't not put the things in the recycling and do that. But it is unfair in that case that I could, as we did have, they've moved now, but my next door neighbour, exactly the same couple, same age, everything else. They didn't put any food waste out and no recycling of any consequence. And they were paying the same as I was in council tax, and you think, well, is that?
And what you're doing is much cheaper for the council than the thing. I know I was exactly the same. I put my residual bin out last week, and we get it done. We're in a 4-weekly cycle, so we only get it done every 4 weeks. And there was one. I actually thought it was empty. When I went to move it, I thought it was empty, but there was one little bag in the bottom. Yeah. And I did put it out just because it was due, but there was no real reason to put it out.
So you've got a 4-week collection.
Four every 4 weeks for residual. Wow. But then we do have food waste. We've got a glass bin. We've got paper and cardboard. We've got metals and cans, and then we've got compost bins. So we've got 6 bins.
Yeah. Well, I was in discussion recently, and there are authorities worried in England. When I was talking to, they do it once every 3 weeks. Now, of course, the government have decreed that it should be a fortnightly collection.
Yeah.
And the council is saying, we can't go back to fortnightly. We can't afford it. We haven't got the vehicles. We can't afford it. And why should we?
Yeah.
My answer to it is to say, for councillors to say to the government, fine, okay, would go back to fortnightly. Now we can't afford it, so what are you going to give us? You're going to pay us to do it? You're going to give us money to support us?
Yeah.
Or if you think there is a better idea, then tell us what to do and we'll do it if you're that clever. But unless you're going to pay as you throw, where people therefore can't put it, or not can't, but encouraged, in inverted commas, not to put it out, then you'll get it happening. And it's done around the world. You know, why are we so different?
We seem to be really scared of saying to people it is actually their waste and they need to take responsibility for their waste, don't we? We seem to shy away from that all the time.
Well, it's always the council's responsibility, isn't it? It's like that the vaping organisation who said it's not our problem, it's the council's for not helping us out to recycle or recover all these vapes. You're like, really? Come on.
Yeah. Because we were talking last week about a magic wand. What would you do to make a change? And what I only wrote today, people taking responsibility for their own waste. Starting with litter, for example. How can you have litter on the ground? Where does litter come from? It's only from people. A small amount might be natural. It just things get torn apart, but the majority of it is because of people, and people it's just their habits and or lack of care and concern about the place, and that's it. But I think that there's going to become a crunch with the government. I mean, all authorities are under real serious financial trouble. So if you've got an idea to boost it a bit more and go up from it, then I should think it should happen. Bristol is a classic example. It was a weekly collection residual and a fortnightly recycling. They then switched to a fortnightly residual and a weekly recycling, 240-litre bin, and then a few years ago they switched to a 180-litre bin. And the next step is they've got to now go from a 180-litre bin fortnightly to 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whichever. Take 3 weeks for a start, but they've got to do that. And whether people will appreciate that, I always say, with appeal to people's better nature, as far as waste is concerned, they haven't got one. And I don't know if that's a majority or minority. I do get very het up about it. The thing about, well, if you have it, you'll have more fly tipping. I say to people, you're going to fly tip, are you? Oh, I'm not going to. So you think all your neighbours are going to fly tip? You have this thought about the quality of your neighbours and your local neighbourhood and all that sort of thing. Somebody's fly tipping. If you don't, if we can actually isolate those people and catch them and deal with them, let's do that rather than having the minority dictate the majority.
No, I would agree.
I think where it's going to come to, Terry, eventually is I think councils are going to start realising that certain waste streams are actually quite a lot cheaper to handle. You know, composting or food waste is actually a lot cheaper for them, and it actually there's a lot of commercial sense in looking at the waste as a basket of goods, if you like, and trying to push the public to the not so much the cheapest option, but the most cost-effective option for the council. And there's big savings there. If they could get everybody using the food waste collection, there's big savings there, especially with the landfill tax just going jacked up by another £20 a tonne.
But it's not just the waste and the recycling and all that goes with it, but of course it's what you can use, and this is where the public haven't got an answer. It's environmentally the right thing to do. Yeah. So you're taking food waste, which goes to landfill and creates methane and all goes with it, or you can make methane with it in an AD plant and create energy from it. And we happen to be short of energy in this country, so it's a win-win-win situation. So that's what should be said to the public. That's why we want you to collect food separately. We want to save the planet, save the whale and all that. But it's a big that one thing you mentioned earlier about why has it happened? Why aren't we doing sort of pay as you throw? That goes back, basically, goes back to Maggie Thatcher and the community charge and all that sort of thing, and then came on with the bins. And any government party are afraid of a bin tax, just the phrase bin tax, which was jumped on by the Daily Mail and the Daily Mirror and all those, and that's the problem. They daren't use that words, and that's what they'll see the business of it, not paying as you do it. When I do training courses, I would do a training course and we'd be talking about waste and all that. And we'd have the morning and go in the afternoon. I'd go back after lunch and have you seen the news? I just looked on the news online, and from next year, we're all going to be paying the same for our gas, water, and electricity. However much you use, they're all aghast. You can't do that. Well, we do it with waste. So
Yeah.
I like that one. I like that one. I think it's interesting. I was going to say earlier on, I detect a Welsh accent there, Terry. So, what's your thoughts of what's happening in Wales? Because they seem to be quite progressive in terms of what they're trying to do.
Well, that's one of the questions that I've posed to the people this morning who are going for chartered upgrading. Is I would ask as a on a panel is, how does England move from this 45% plateau and emulate Wales? And that's and it is. I mean, it's a combination. Wales has obviously had a different approach for the last 20 or 30 years. Because I was doing the HNC course in Wales regularly, so I had a lot to do with the Welsh authorities, because obviously nearly all the students were from there, so we got close with it. And years ago, 20, 30 years ago, Wales actually invested in it. They gave money to councils to start services and to help bolster services, and we're talking about major amounts they were providing. England, all it's ever done, going back, this is back decades, but they had a fund and they'd say, right, we've got a £10 million fund, make bids for it. But it's a one-off, so once it's, you can only put buy bins and things like that out of it. You can't use it for revenue going on. And Wales did, and they increased the amount. Now we got the bite comes back, of course, and the Wales are saying, of course, if you don't meet your targets, we're going to start charging you. They get charged so much per ton by missing the target. So it was give, and it's developed it. There's a social thing as well, isn't there? If you're the worst of the local authorities in Wales and there's only so few there, it's different to 300 in England. So you've got that pressure as well.
Yeah.
But how you can have cities like Birmingham on a weekly black bin collection and a abysmal performance and billions of pounds in debt. We know the problems it's all got microcosm problems. Bristol's the typical. There's some good parts, there's some bad parts.
Do you not think we just need to reduce the population by about quite a few million, and then we'll be sorted?
Well, that's the extreme. I thought I was being extreme with it.
We've got Wales there on how many million, and we've got Scotland, Wales, Scotland, then we've got England on 20 odd million, 20, 30 million. It's very difficult to compare.
It is, but you could argue
comparing apples with pears, isn't it? Really, to be fair,
you could argue that each one is a microcosm, isn't it? That Bristol is, the same as Cardiff. So what's the difference? So there's no benefit in Cardiff and Bristol. You've got to be careful looking at the performances. I always remember when you have these tables of who is the best authority, and I spoke to one of the ones who was the top one, which are often middle class greeny areas. And I said, can we talk about multi-occupancy, apartments and things like that, blocks like that. How are you fixed for that? He said, we have got a high-rise block. We have a high-rise block you had, and that was partly concerned.
Yeah.
Whereas lots of cities have got huge, and they're a particular problem. Although, as I said earlier, I keep going back to the fact that I think we've always got to look at the deal with the majority, and then you can spend the time on the smaller minority. I helped put in the wheel bin service and alternating collections into South Gloucestershire, and that there's 105,000 properties, of which 95,000 are normal domestic properties, and 10,000 are others. And we said, right, we're going to deal with the 95,000 like that, and then we'll deal with the 10,000 separately.
Yeah.
Look for courses and things like that, but otherwise, if not careful, you get the one dictate the other, and the tyranny of the minority is always something that I get concerned about. That we don't do things because of this. We don't do it because of fly tipping. Well, no, we catch the fly tippers, and of course that's the big thing. We deal with them properly. Your idea is, Jane, is the answer. Execute them. The first offence.
We're going to be extreme here today, aren't we?
Reduce the population, but go back to Christmas Carol. Yeah. So I was thinking
Was
that's the right idea. But
slightly extreme. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think that is the problem, that you know Scotland, Wales are relatively small countries with small populations, so sometimes you feel as if you can try things a bit easier, and it's a bit rather than trying to deal with someone nationally over the whole of England or whatever. But yes.
You've also got the other angle. This is common amongst all the home countries except England, and that is that Wales and Scotland will do things because England aren't. So they do. We want to be different, and that's a tradition, which is I like the idea actually, because it would force England to think twice about it. So I've been in England for 50 odd years, so I'm still the Welsh accent is still there, I'm told, to an extent, and I still feel passionate about Wales, unless I'm watching the rugby, of course, and I just feel suicidal. But that's the problem at the moment. But it's we still don't seem to have got people on board. The people who want to save the planet, save the whale, and all that. I mean, I don't know if it's any better now, but in my day, the worst people of all for domestic collections were students. And students' digs and all that. They just threw everything out. They had no care. They didn't recycle. They didn't do anything. And then they went on the weekend, went on a Save the Whale march. But they couldn't. They're disconnected between the two. It all starts at home, and I think that's the environmental litter. It all starts at a small scale. We've still got a view of, well, my bit of litter's not going to make any difference. What the hell? Donkeys years ago, where somebody was monitoring street cleansing as a client and making sure it was done. So he had this idea that what he did, he got a cigarette packet, wrote his name on it, put it down in the channel, and then went away and came back to see if it had been cleaned. And the contractor threatened to take him to court for depositing litter.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, my little bit's not going to make a difference. One cigarette packet. And they said, there you are. That's exactly the problem. My little one packet. And where your gets 2, we get 3, and that's it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That attitude of my little bit isn't a problem. It's why people still drop things on the street now, in this day and age.
Yeah. So moving on, Terry. Although you're pretty much retired apart from your CIWM work, how do you relax and get away from the day to day?
If you ask my wife, she said I work. That's what.
You're not retired yet.
Yes, something she's on to me about. I've got to find a hobby. My first hobby will be sorting out all this stuff, particularly on computer for a start. I looked yesterday for something, and I found that. I remember that. That was 20 years ago. I can extract that. I need that and keep a look at that. But I just haven't got. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, I had a real regular hobby then of I was a code driver, international rallying code driver, and which is fascinating. We started off with a Mini, and then we were into a Porsche 911.
Wow.
Nice.
all around the UK, Scotland. We did a bit in Scotland, and we went abroad, and we did the historic Monte Carlo rally and things like that. And
did you ever win?
Oh yeah, we won our championship. We didn't win to win overall. It would have been difficult because we had people who we were just amateurs. We had a couple of lads who helped us with the mechanic, and we did most of it ourselves. And that was it. We had teams who always won the top one of all. He had a Porsche, and he'd fly in from Dublin, and the car was provided with all the fixing equipment with it. And at the end of the day, it was put on a low loader, and he went back home, and that's the last he saw of the car. So you're up against that. But we were regularly finished with good finish results, and we won the championship in our class regularly because we worked so hard. Plus, we were more mature, so we had a brain, so we only took calculated risks rather than the youngsters who they'd finish first, or they wouldn't finish at all. That was the usual thing.
It's all or nothing. Yeah,
it was all or nothing, and we could do that. Yeah.
So did you say you were the co-driver, or you were the driver?
Yeah, I was the co-driver.
So did you have the map going left, Right, turn here quickly.
That was it. That was the whole thing. That was my role, was that of guiding it through it. And unfortunately, the driver, he, in his past history of it, when he lived up north, he was a co-driver, so he knew it all. So he has to teach me it, and I was never up to his standard really. But his driving was absolutely brilliant. But yeah, it fitted in my work-study background because the co-driver is the organizer. So you organise the whole thing. You just don't read the map. You got to check the times and everything. And that's one of the things that I learned very early on, was that you get to the end of a stage, in the first stage, and you finish right. Now you're going to get from there a 20-mile journey to somewhere else. And the driver would say, "Well, can I have some water? What's next? What we do?" And say, in the end, I'd say, "Whoa! I learned the lesson. No, here's your water. Have that. I will carry on. Go down this road for another mile, and then you would control it, because it's management, office management, to get the timing and get everything that goes with it. And so that was a challenge, but it was a partnership. The real irony about it was that at one stage, I was the client and he was the contractor for waste collections in Bristol. So, and of course, it's a parallel with it. So the client says, go here, go there, do this, do that, do the other. The contractor does it. The client says, yes, he's done it. Next, and he gives the next information, and that's it. And it was exactly that symbiotic relationship. What we're going to do, we wanted to get to the end in first place. So, and that's what any client-contractor relationship should be. That's working together for the same cause, the same answer. So yeah, and we did well, and won a lot of silverware. And in spite of sometimes, I like to think I don't think anything wrong, but I remember the one occasion only a small one, where the worst thing is the red mist with the driving, you see, because you're following a car, and you were doing a circuit and coming round again, and we come up to the T junction, and I'm saying, T junction, 90 left. He's going right, we're going left. I said that 3 times, and we get to it, and he's going right. And I haul the wheel over, pulled it over. We hit the bank and just about got round and landed on the right side, because no, he saw that car and his brain, no, he wasn't listening. Shut the mind off and all that sort of thing. So yeah. It's I did the biggest accident I was in was up near Hoyk, actually, up on the rally there, where I was with somebody else for a change, and he took a series of bends too tight, and 4 or 5 other cars had gone off as well. We went off furthest. We rode down the mountain. Literally, it was sky earth, rode right down the mountain. It took 2 Land Rovers to pull us out of it. Wow. We gone further than anybody else. When we got there, we put it on its well. People helped us put it on its wheels, and there was not a piece of glass left there, and the whole car deformed to the shape of the roll cage, which protected you, And we drove back into Hoyk in it, mind you, in this car. Rolled on a mountain, and the chap turned it into a pickup truck after. So yeah, but you don't think about work when you're rallying.
No, I can imagine that. You've got a bit of a focused one-track mind there, haven't you? I've got sort of about a fact you'd want to share from your job or sector that people wouldn't know. I think, the fact that you're a rally driver or rally co-driver, people wouldn't know. But in terms of your job or sector, is there anything there you think people should know?
Well, we've discussed it. People should know that it's their waste and they are responsible. They don't seem to know that. They seem to think, and I suppose it's because the council, because the corporation, go back to the old days, it was the corporation, and that was blamed for anything and everything that happened. I think that people don't realise the harm that we're doing to the environment, and we're back to the business of my little bit, how important it all is and how important what we can do. I always, when I do my training courses, I take the example of one of my favourites is custard tarts, box of 4 custard tarts. So you've got a box, you've got a thin line, a thin piece of plastic so you can see what's in there, and then you've got a plastic tray and each one's in a aluminium foil. And I will obviously take them, eat them. The foil obviously goes into it. I'll take that window off and recycle that separately, and then the box goes into the cardboard recycling. How many people do that? Or do they just take the box and think, oh, and it goes into the residual waste? That's the problem. It's people, we've got to not play at it and be serious with it, because we only got to show how much is not being done and how much people could do. And the frightening thing about it is they could save millions of pounds, millions and millions of pounds, and save a huge amount of damage that's being created by it. But until people realise that and realise what food waste is, people still think food waste is oh, that's the scrapings off the plate. No, that's your peelings and everything else, your orange skins and things like that, your banana peel, everything like that, as well as obviously food that's gone beyond a sell-by date, or use-by date. You'll always get that as well.
Yeah, I think we've done a lot of waste composition analysis, and it's the food waste that's the biggest thing, and particularly food that it's still in its packaging. Like you say, it's some of it you think, well, yeah, it's past its best before date or whatever, but it's a packet of crisps. Is that really going to make a difference? So yeah.
I used to do that when I did the Waste Smart courses. You would have a room full of people, and you would ask them, if you had a pack of crisps 2 days out of date, would you put your hands up if you would still eat them? And you would have half the class put their hands up, and generally it was the older half of the class, and the younger half of the class would say, no, we can't eat them because they're out of date. Generally as a rule, it was an age thing.
It does come down to an actual what it is, exactly that. Pallet crisps, yeah, fine. If it was cheese or something like that, or milk, certainly not. You can tell that. But unless you're maybe a meat, maybe, but certainly things like crisps and things like that, well, what the hell, I mean, bread, well, okay, unless it's got moldy, then we'll toast it and something like that. But
you just take the moldy bits off, it's fine.
Take moldy bits off, and that's the thing. I mean, I mean, my background, I come from the Welsh Valleys. Somebody saying, what did your father hope for? And my father didn't hope for it. He just said, you can do anything you want to in the world, my son, but you're not going down the mines. That was his pledge to me, because it was horrendous. But of course, it was a different world. We didn't have fridge, obviously. We had a cold room larder, which was just cold. And of course, mother went shopping every day. She went down the high street and she bought the food and brought it home, and that's what we had that day. And that's what we had as children. If you don't want it, you'll have it tomorrow again, or nothing. Not a matter of, oh, I don't fancy that tonight, mummy. I don't fancy that. That's I want something else. I want this. I want that. No, those days weren't. You ate well, and but you ate what you were given, or not at all.
Yes. That was certainly my upbringing as well, Terry. That it was you ate what was in your plate, and if you didn't, my brothers would have stolen it off my plate anyway. So there we go. Anyway, a favourite piece of slang or dialect that's maybe pertinent to the industry that you've got?
Well, an odd one with Bristol is, and I didn't realise till I got here. I mean, Bristol got its name by was Brig Stow, the bridge over the River Stow. So it was Brig Stow originally.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, for some reason, an L got added on the end, so you got Bristol. Now that's fair enough, okay, but a true Bristolian, and it's getting less now, will add an L to other words. So if he lives in this area, not in the area, or that's a good ideal. So he doesn't mean ideal, he means idea with an L on the end.
And how long did it take you to work that out, Terry, when you moved there?
The strangest thing was when I saw it written down on a worksheet, when a bloke who was working on the vehicles, and he listed down his extras. So it was extras, but with an L in the extras. And so, and the one I came up the other day, I don't know where it was from, but I thought it was more Bristol, but refuge collection with a G instead of an S. Have you come across that?
I've come across that one before, actually. Yeah. I'm trying to think which area, but I have come across that one before.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
Refuge
those,
collection. Yeah.
refuge
Quite-
collection.
I like these. I like these. And then the next one is your magic wand, but you've pretty much given us your magic wand, haven't you?
Yeah.
There we go. So
Okay.
yeah.
I think the only other thing it would be nice if we were recognised. I mean, I always say again to students what problem we've got. Ford Motor Company makes cars. Okay, Ford Motor Company stops making cars. How long before we'd realise? You know,
Once.
long time before you realise, oh, there's no Fords on the road. We stop doing our job, and within a matter of days, you know it. And yet, we're only known by not when we don't do our job. We don't get recognised for the job we do. Ford Motor Company, who make brilliant cars, make millions of cars and all that, they get recognised for that. We get recognised only because if we don't know we're doing, then that's a success. We're sort of hidden service in that respect, and I think that's the problem. Come back to winter gritting again. Winter gritting, if everybody sailed to work and didn't know you'd been out, that was a win. You never got the recognition for it. It was just assumed that, well, the fairies had come along and got rid of the ice and snow. One on that, by the way, taught equal opportunities, and people with an Eskimo worked for us on winter gritting. Now, how about that for a minority Eskimo in Bristol?
Well, that was a great job for him then, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's a lovely lad, really lovely lad. But yeah, that was always one of the jokes. That was get him out on
I can
the winter
imagine.
gritting.
It's interesting what the gritters have done with I don't know if it's happened down south, but up in Scotland, the public have been allowed to name them, so they're all named, and they're all live in the tracker, so you can go into the tracker and you can actually see where they're out. And I think that's quite good sort of PR for them, that they've, you can see they're out and you can see they're working and so on. Maybe the refuse side needs to do the same with the bin lorries in the local area. Get the kids' schools to name the lorries, and
name a bin lorry.
most of them are tracked now as well. So it's like,
Well, it works with Eddie Stobart, doesn't it? I mean, he does the naming theirs and all that. But I think the thing is, my message to people as well is, particularly new to business and all that, is to look for variety and understand transferable skills. Right in the middle of my waste career, when we had a combined services, I was in the waste section, waste and resources section. Then we also were part then of the group which was highways, parks, maintenance, all that sort of thing all together. And I was asked by the MD, would I go and run the highway section? It was making a huge loss. They had a plan to turn it round. Would I go and deliver change, which is my speciality? And that was it. And it was great because I couldn't interfere. I didn't know the detail, therefore I had to hands off. The crew I had, what they didn't like was dealing with the client, didn't like dealing with the politicians, didn't like dealing with the money, which is bread and butter to me. And whether you're doing refuse or building or sewers or whatever, the same principles apply. And this transferable skills is what's important. I mean, I come up in the days when people had a career for life. And I was obviously one career in terms of waste, but different parts within that. And I don't think people should even think about a career for life now. They should just go into it and do the things they should do, and do it, and don't be afraid to go another job. So there's so much you learn which is transferable. Well, that's why people can be running British Airways 1 minute and British Gas next minute. It's, as long as you're not dealing with the details, somebody else is dealing with the detail. You're dealing with the principles, and that's what that comes over. That's part of life's experience.
I suppose that comes into our final question is, what advice would you give to the younger generation coming into the sector, apart from recycle when you're a student? Is there any other advice you'd give them?
Yeah, I think the advice is to try and move around and get the different jobs. Try and don't assume you know what the other job is. Taking the basic principle of client contracted job. So when I was doing the HNC, obviously I had people who were client side by the contractor side. And one of the girls, I remember, she was working with a local authority in the southwest on the client side. The contractor had problems with manpower and somebody to manage it, and so she was seconded to the contractor side. And I was speaking to her about it, and she said, well, you explained what it was all about, but I never really realized what it was. I've never worked so hard in my life. The challenges of walking in the morning, thinking you've got everything sorted, and then the other thing is that vehicle doesn't start, that vehicle's at a breakdown, Charlie's broken his leg, somebody can't come in, etc., etc. All these things that happen. So the challenges are really dynamic and happening all the time. So I've never worked so hard. I've never enjoyed my life so much, she said. It really is brilliant. And she said, I'll stick with the contractor side because it's more of a hands-on feel to it, in spite of the challenges. But yeah, try a bit of both. That's what when we did our trainee managers, we did that. We said, right, you'll spend 6 months with the client, 6 months with the contractor, periods like that. At the end of it, then you were given a choice which you went for. And a lot went for the contractor, although they knew it was hard work. But the contractor side obviously gave a lot of satisfaction to people. But it is a challenging job. I like to think today the difference is we're more proud of what we do. I go back to the days when somebody would say, one of my students, what do you do? What's your job? I work for the council. Not I work in waste management. I work for the council. They were ashamed to say they worked for waste management, the refuse. Now, it took something to admit you were for the council because that didn't have a very good reputation.
Well,
But yeah, they wouldn't, I'd ask people, you're in the pub tonight and somebody comes up to you and says, what do you do? And I say, tell them what you do. Tell him in waste management, recycling, all that. And I tell you something, you'll be the center of attention because everybody will have a view on it. They'll all want to discuss it. They'll all have an opinion. They'll know much more than the accountant next to you. Oh, they'll forget him and all that. So everybody has an opinion about it, and which is good, but also bad because half their opinions are wrong.
yeah, absolutely. Well, yes.
That is no, absolutely. That's very true. When you say you're involved in waste management, there's always a conversation starts. There's always without fail. So that's
one of the things I do as my wife's she's with the local townswomen's guild. She's on the committee of the townswomen's guild, and I do an occasional talk to them about local waste management. Or the next one I'm doing in June, I think, is waste around the world. Little presentation, all that. But they're so interested and so expert at it, and so many challenging questions. They really are. Why can't we recycle that? Why can't we do this? Why can't we? And they really are. This is the 60, 70, 80-year-old, and that's what's so nice. That is that we're in a job which is interesting, and I'm absolutely proud of what I do. And when I go along to a meeting like that, if they don't know me, and I say, my name's Terry March and I speak rubbish. And that's my opening line every time, and that gives a good laugh for a start. So, yeah, fascinating world.
I do, before we finish up, Terry, I do actually have an apology to make on behalf of myself. For all these years I've known you, I thought your surname was Marsh, as in Marsh. I don't know why, but I've just always thought that.
I can tell you why. Because you're normal. That's a standard, everything we do. I mean, my wife's got this mantra. The name's March, like the month. And he'll still write down Marsh. It's just one of those things. It's more common, obviously. But yeah, I still see people referring to me as Mr. Marsh. We were known as Marshy. Families were the Marshies. The March is much a harder one. But yeah, I get now still people think it's Marsh. And
yeah, I'm doing a presentation for IOSH next week actually, and we must have sent, between myself and somebody in the office here, we must have spent about 6 emails to say to them how you spell my first name, Alistair. Yeah. And the last email, they'd corrected it in one place and still had it wrong someplace else. And I'm like, I'm just giving up. The official paperwork has gone out correct, so I'll just leave it. I'll just leave it there. Yeah. But it is quite interesting with names. So there we go. So thank you very much for your time, Terry. That's very much appreciated. Enjoy your retirement, but I've get the feeling that you might not quite be retired yet. So your wife's probably quite correct. But
Yeah.
thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
Well,
thank
thank
you.
you. I thoroughly enjoyed it. As you can see, it's talking. Once you talk the talk, and being the Celtic blood, it comes over, and you really do get into it. So, it's been a real pleasure, both of you. I really enjoyed it because it brings back memories as well, and puts into mind some of the things you haven't thought about recently. And oh yeah, that was a good point, and things like that. So it's a good one. I know now the ultimate answer to how we improve recycling by getting not more recyclables, but less people. So that's the answer.
Absolutely.
We've got that in a nutshell. But anyway, take care of yourselves.
Thank you.
And all the best.
Thanks, Terry.